nervous about this, anxious. That's great. That's a great feeling because you know what? That means it's important to you and it's important to us, and those are the kind of players we need on this team.
This is my first professional women's league tryout. There's great energy here. Everyone's super excited to be here. There's some nerves, but it's like good kind of nerves.
You can feel it from your toes to your last hair. It's just that excitement.
Es un equipo muy fuerte que me inspira para ser mejor.
This community has like so much growing momentum in it,
and I just love the camaraderie and the atmosphere that's here right now.
A lot of these women are my heroes.
I thought last year was hard picking a team. This year is going to be even harder.
It feels like an impossible decision right now. There's just so much talent that came out that the challenge ahead of not just selecting this team, but then going forward, it does seem daunting. This is a talented league.
Next time you have the opportunity to do something like this, you should take it, because even if you don't make the team or you don't think you're ready, the amount of learning that happens with the coaches and the scouts that we have is invaluable. So to take yourself to the next level, do things like this.
Hello and welcome, sports fans, Gridlock fans, Indy Red fans, PUL fans, Ultimate fans, to this rewind of the inaugural game for New York Gridlock and Indy Red in the 2019 PUL season. My name is Juleon Robinson. I use he, him pronouns. I'll be your host today with Kate McInerney with Indy Red and Lauren Piontek, LP, from New York Gridlock. Thanks for joining us, y'all.
Thanks for having us.
To be here.
So, in addition to the sponsors you just saw before that sick highlight reel, we just want to give a shout out to Match Fit Performance, New York Gridlock Sports Performance Team, and VC Ultimate, the PUL uniform sponsor. We also want to give a big shout out to the National Bailout Fund. New York Gridlock is currently working on a project with the Bailout Fund, raising donations. And the National Bailout is a Black-led, Black-centered collective of abolitionist organizers, lawyers, and activists, building a community-based movement to support Black folks and in systems of pretrial detentions and ultimately mass incarceration. We're going to be giving them a couple of different shout-outs throughout the stream today. If you have the resources, we highly encourage you to donate. Even a couple of dollars really helps this great project. But without further ado, we have LP, we have Kate. Thanks for joining us on the stream, y'all. How you feeling today?
Good. I'm excited to watch this again.
And yeah, I've been looking forward to this for a while. And also it's like beautiful weather here in Cincinnati, which just like really lifts my mood a lot too.
Now, LP, where are you taking the call from?
I'm in Jersey City, and it is also gorgeous weather. We had the blinds and drapes open all day. Just lots of sunlight. It's been nice.
Mm-hmm. And how have y'all been connecting with your teams in this moment? I'm sure everyone is sort of separated, especially teams that are pulling talent from so many different places. But yeah, Kate, how has Indy Red been staying connected right now?
We've been doing every other week like online practices. So before the PUL canceled the season, we were running through our play sets, like offense and defense, like pull plays online, always starting with like a human element. So like, hey, like check in, how's everyone doing? This is a bummer, but hopefully it ends soon. And we want to be ready whenever the season starts back up or whenever the opportunity arises. Since the season was canceled, we have pivoted. We're still meeting, but we're pivoting towards more of a like supportive structure. Like here's some workouts that we're doing together. We had a psychologist come in, actually from New York, Annie, and I don't remember her last name because she was like accessible enough to like
Chandler.
emphasize her first name. Yes, and she was really, really wonderful. I think we all felt really like cared for, that she took her time and that our team leadership made that resource available to us.
That's rad. Sounds like y'all have had a pretty good couple of weeks despite it all. LP, what's Gridlock been doing to stay together?
Yeah, so we actually are also, I guess, had access to Annie. Annie made herself available to us as well. The fun fact there is that she was part of Survivor, the original New York women's team. But we've been doing, I think since everything got postponed, it's just been weekly meetings. Wednesday nights we're still supported by our training, Match Fit Performance. And we'll do one of our workouts together on Wednesday nights. And then afterwards, it's been a variety of either just update calls or we did film watching one week. And I think this last week we did a dangerous plays discussion and talked about all the nuances there. So that's been kind of keeping us in the Frisbee mode. And then we have open Zoom meetings on Tuesday nights that have just been available for us to kind of come and talk about whatever. And so it's been good to stay connected. And of course, we have our Slack that we keep pretty active, and the Snapchat group where everyone's been kindly sending their pet pictures, which is probably the most important one.
Literally crucial. It's why I got back on Snapchat.
Yeah, I know this time has been really hard for a lot of Ultimate folks who are so used to being able to go to league, go to practice, or in the midst of what would have been tryout season right now. But I've also been hearing from a lot of folks that their club teams have really been keeping them up and keeping them plugged into, calf photos, workouts, keeping everyone sort of mentally in a good place, even though we have to be a little isolated right now. So I'm glad to hear that that's the experience with both of y'all's teams. Before we dive into the game, though, I know that y'all have a history that goes back a little bit. LP, do you want to talk about your history with Indy Red, for those that may not know?
Yeah, so I actually was one of the founding members along with Jackie Lai back in 2018 when the year before the PUL, when it was kind of the, I guess, like, let's see if it works phase. And Kate came over from Cincinnati along with some other phenomenal female athletes. And that's, I guess, the beginning there. We played about 5 games that first season, I think. And here we are now. 2 years later, we have an official league and 10 teams now, which is pretty impressive. 12?
Yeah. But since that first year, it's been like an Indy Cincy like meld, which has been
Cinderella. Yeah, because I noticed like last year, just so many more Cincinnati players, and that would have been a big, I guess, challenge for you in Sydney. I guess trying to coordinate between the two cities, plus weekend from Milwaukee and Chicago.
Yeah, and now in 2020, there's people from St. Louis. It draws from a really wide range.
Yeah, you stole Nashville St. Louis contingent.
We did, yeah, but New York stole you, LP. Do you want to talk about that?
That seems a little dramatic. But yeah.
Well, I think that's a great way to lead into a little bit of the start of the game. I know, LP, when we were talking yesterday, I forget if it was you or Kate that said Kate, I think, might have mentioned that there was an LP-shaped hole in the game because you weren't able to make it, actually. Where were you for this super important game?
Right. I was it's an annual family trip to New Orleans to go to Jazz Fest. I think that would have been the 4th year in a tradition at that point, where my dad had been going for 30 years. So it was kind of one of those, like, every year that weekend in May, that's where I have to be for family purposes.
Looks like they've come out with the
And
most to start the
honestly,
game.
this would have been a tough game to play in. I don't
Because this is
I don't
the
know how
team
it
that you started. Like
Yeah.
I think you knew everyone on the team probably.
Yeah, I mean, even the player, like, so you picked up Lena Gorin this year, and I had played with her when she was, I think, a college freshman. I played club with her in Cleveland, and I was so excited. I'm really jealous you got to play with her at this point because she's so much more confident.
Oh,
And
she's great. I think she is one of the players who stands out to me in this game because she is on the young side still, but she has this
right.
pressure, relatively high pressure role on the O-line handle. Like I think she just threw that. But she like just stayed calm and collected the whole time. Yeah, that was really cool. Ultimate in general is like a really small world. You have a teammate on Gridlock that I played with in college, Trisha Smith.
Yeah.
And like that was incredible. We hadn't played or even really seen each other since my wedding. And then we find out that we both made PUL teams and that we were going to play each other in this game. And like that, like, I don't know, it just felt like it came full circle. Like this long-term investment that we all make, pays off like way further down the future than you would ever think.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think this was, the PUL getting created and all the work we put into that first year, like in that completely unknown space. I think getting this whole league together and having those moments is part of why it's so big, right?
Yeah, and I kind of want to emphasize
'Cause
how uncertain it was. This game that we're watching for the Premier Ultimate League it had like its own set of uncertainties. Like neither team had ever played each other or played under the aegis of the league. But before that, LPUNU started Indy Red as like a display team or exhibition. There wasn't any league structure. It was even more uncertain. There had been no women's professional ultimate of any kind anywhere that I'm aware of. So like when I heard that there was going to be a team in Indianapolis, Indy, Nashville, Detroit, I was like, I want to try out for all the teams. Like I have to be part of this somehow.
Oh yeah, you went on an epic road trip, right?
We did, yeah. We tried
Nicole
out for 2
mentioned
teams today. Me and Nicole and Britt and Jen Bull and all the people who are in this game now from Cincinnati. Yeah, we were just determined to help out however we humanly could. And if we didn't make the teams, like, well, heck, that just means that there were like a whole roster full of people who were better than we were. Like that would be an amazing moment. Then
Yeah, and it all came together in this game. And I don't know, how did you both feel during that opening point? I know LP, you weren't there in person, but you still must have had some feelings bubbling up, like when that first poll went up.
I'll start.
I mean, yeah, no, you
go
go.
ahead. Okay, so I was nervous the whole week before this game. I don't have any like shame in saying that because I like just so much wanted to give a good experience to the fans. I knew that like pretty much everyone involved was taking some level of risk on this, and I just wanted to pay off for people. Luckily, the nerves kind of like went away by the time the game actually started, and it was incredible to be playing on this field in front of this like densely packed crowd. I think they might actually show it later in the stream how many people were on the sidelines with like signs and they were cheering. They had like coordinated certain cheers. Like it was a very engaged fan group that even though they were hoping for their home team to win, like we definitely got that energy for us too. Like that was huge.
And I will say, Bree Harrison a great matchup with
I
Lauren.
don't.
How about for
I
you,
will answer.
Elsie,
I
watching from
promise. But
afar?
sorry,
Going
the
head to head.
sequence that just happened. First of all, the Lena Wag matchup is one of my favorites that happens in this game because both of them have the same type of like intensity, especially on handle defense. And it's
That would be
extremely
18
difficult to
Wig out.
overthrow Bree. Yes.
Yeah.
And same kind of just calmness. But yeah, I was extremely torn because there's the competitor in me that wants Gridlock to crush any of our competition, and then there's the part of me that wants, that Indy Red will always be in my heart, and I want them to do well in everything. So it's one of those things where like, okay, maybe Gridlock still wins, but but like it's a good game, and it really like it was a good game. Like, it was like so every
Oh, it was a really good
D
game.
every D I'm excited and sad for at the same time. Like while watching this, there were a lot of emotions at the dinner table that night as I was trying to watch this stream. Yes, Britt.
So we came out to start the game on offense, we being red, and got broken. And then this point that we just scored here was the second O point with, I think, probably the same line. And one thing I like never want to get complacent about is the mental challenge of like coming out and doing it again after you didn't succeed the first time. And so I'm proud of us that we were able to pull that out here and let there's like Bree Harrison 14 going long and she's about to receive the goal, which is like a classic pass. But moments like that happened several times in this game.
Very much getting to know each other for the most part.
Yeah,
I was
there's
also
nothing
gonna
like
like
that first
from
goal.
all over the East Coast. There are players coming from Boston, coming up from the DC area.
You all did a
What was that,
great
Juleon?
job.
How's that been sort of integrating with players that are coming from outside the
Oh, I was just saying, there's nothing quite like that first hold in a game. Like really steady things out, no matter how it starts.
Yeah, like you're good,
Yeah.
but like it helps to prove it to yourself too. LP, I'm willing to hear your praise.
Oh, I was gonna say you did a phenomenal job at shooting the disc, and taking advantage of those completions. I think almost any time that you all completed a long shot, it was a goal for you all because everyone followed the disc so well and never let the defense reset.
Yeah, yeah, good call. I actually really liked the deep shots on both sides here. Okay, so this is a big injury for an Indy Red player, Kellen Gibney. They tore their ACL on the pole. It was their first pull of the Premier Ultimate League, and they went down with the injury. And I know that's been really hard for them. It's been like a tough healing road. They've kind of like one way that they've sort of coped with it is by being really active and present on social media. So they like to say that they're like the role model that they wish they'd had. And if you want to follow them, it's like at KGibbs18 on Twitter, I think. But yeah, they are like a big like energy player for the team, and so having them go down in that point was mentally pretty rough.
Not much right now. Here we go. Judy Jarvis. There we go. It's a great open cut. Pump fake. That was a good one.
And yeah, thanks for that, Kate. It's really, Frisbee games are always emotional, and it's really tough when one of our teammates goes down. But I was really inspired by how Indy Red bounced back, and I've been following Kellen on Twitter, and it's been pretty inspiring for me as just a fan to see all the work that they've been putting in. It's been really rad. Just wanted to let folks know watching the stream that we are going to have a couple of trivia questions throughout the game with some prizes on the line. So we're going to give those out to the first person to correctly answer in the chat over the course of the game. So keep your eyes out and get your Gridlock trivia knowledge at the ready. Get it at your fingertips because there are some really sweet prizes on the line for you. Mm-hmm.
I can't
yeah, getting back to the game. Oh yeah, there's some good questions up.
Okay, so I know she just got scored on, but KK and Sazi the fact that this matchup didn't happen more is really sad because both of them are some of the best handle guards I know. Like Kristen in particular, if you ever want to talk to somebody who, or if you ever want to tell people who to watch for handle defense, she is the perfect balance of poaching to being in their shorts. And Stasi, like the fact that she was able to get open on her is really impressive and just testament to how good Stasi is. But
definitely see right there.
yeah, that was
we only
awesome
got it one
matchup. I
other
think that one happened
time.
so times.
And unseasonably cold.
We only got it one other time. I marked down all the points. I'm so sad.
Gridlock
marks up
seems
on
like they
Tucker a lot.
Tell me if this is true, LP. Gridlock in that game seems like they switched matchups frequently. Like I did not feel like I had the same person on me just like the entire game, which is how things sometimes play out. Do you know if that is like an intentional strategy item for Gridlock?
I think part of the problem here was that this was, or not problem, I guess part of the strategy here was, it was part of the strategy. Sorry. We didn't have film on this iteration of Indy Red, so we didn't know who to scope out exactly, other than like we knew Brittany was going to be a tough matchup, so that I think you see Cassie on her fairly often. And so outside of, I guess, more or less major names, we weren't really able to strategize around that. Yeah. And I think one of the other things I noted that while I was watching this game is that these O and D lines are nothing like what we played the rest of the season.
Really?
Yeah, so what was interesting was like the D line that gets put out there pretty often is what turned into our eventual O line. So it's hard to remember exactly what the strategy points were at this point because they changed so much by the end of the season.
Yeah, it's a little hard to like overstate how much experimentation goes on in every game, especially the first game of the season, because both teams at this point have had 3 to maybe 5 practices together. And then this is the first time they're competing. And it's not like a tournament where you get to like maybe have a warm-up game and then like evolve over the day. It's just the one game.
Right.
And so that is something that stood out to me too, was like, well, now we get to trial by fire, all that stuff that we talked about in our small number of practices, and hope that our chemistry can develop really quickly.
Right.
Yeah, and I want to ask you all more about the one game format and how that is so different from the tournament format we normally play in. But first I want to actually correct myself about the trivia questions. We're actually taking those answers on Twitter. So before I ask the first one, you actually need to get Twitter up as well. I don't want anyone to, miss their chance at a prize and blame it on me later. So get your Twitter open at NY_gridlock. Tweet at us with the answer to our upcoming question. But yeah, getting back to what y'all were talking about, how was preparation for a single game format, sometimes when you have to travel pretty far, different from that tournament vibe that a lot of Club Ultimate players are used to? LP, I don't know if you want to take that one first.
Oh, and a great open side throw.
Yeah. And we got lucky because we got flown to all our travel games, especially there. But I think I felt it way more on travel games than I did home games. Because home games was, train ride down to the game, and it was fine. It was kind of normal, and there wasn't a big environmental adjustment there. And there's still a lot more nerves, but I think the warm-ups were a little more intense than I'm used to, and that might be it. We warmed up a lot harder than I think we do for tournaments. And then away games was just a whole bag of, getting rid of the jet lag or whatever fatigue we felt from trying to fly, and then getting used to whatever new environment we were in. Raleigh's a good example. If we went from like 50-degree weather here to 90 to 100 in Raleigh, and not having time to acclimate that, it's like you have an hour. Good luck. So yeah.
I can answer that from the team organizer perspective. In addition to being a player, so me and my fellow captain, Sydney Owens, number 12, worked with Coach Ryan Gorman before every game to come up with basically like the main scenarios that you know will come. And in a normal tournament, you just kind of like work it out on the fly. So like if the normal person who calls play doesn't happen to be on the line in a normal tournament, like you've got like a minute or two for them to come out and call it anyway, or to designate like a different person to do it. But here you don't. It's really quick in between points. So we have like a shared document for each tournament that lays out all that kind of thing, including if Kate's not on the line, Nicole is going to call the play, and if she's not on the line, this other person's going to call it, and if they're not on the line, like it goes down in a set order, and all of the plays are called in the same way, so that it doesn't matter as much who's calling it. You can hear the same information in the same way, and that kind of thing made like some of those things go away smoother. I also have a story about getting to this game in particular. If this is the right time to tell that.
I think the gridlock defenders are backing
By all means.
marks going up the field.
LP was saying that you flew to all of your away games. I think that makes tons of sense because New York was on the far side, right? From almost any of your games. It was like quite a trip.
Yeah, pretty much.
In Indy made a big effort to drive whenever possible. So I think we flew once. And to this game, we gave players a choice to fly or drive, and I don't remember what incentive we gave to driving, but it's like maybe something small. So a bunch of players chose to drive in a team van, which was a blast. So we like left early this morning, the morning of this game, planning to arrive like a couple of hours before we had to be there for warm-ups. And as you can imagine, like that plan did not exactly go according to the vision, because firstly we like stopped this little local coffee shop that took like a lot longer than you would ever think to get like croissants. And we're looking at our watches like, ooh, it's been like 45 minutes or an hour here. Like we didn't really intend to stay that long, but we still have time. And then we get to New York City, and the game is in the city, which I knew that going in, but I didn't know how to prepare for driving in New York. So we've got Nicole Quay driving this big van through the streets of New York, and our navigation was having us like do a lot of turnarounds to the point like we were just driving around New York like missing our turn several times for like 40 minutes. And at one point we missed our turn, and the navigation said it was like I think we were already late for warm-ups at that point. The navigation said it would be another like 15 to 20 minutes if we kept going the way that it had us go. Like it was just like a huge loop. And Nicole said, screw that. We are not following those directions. We are doing a U-turn in the middle of these New York streets with like traffic on both sides. And she like puts on her signal and like looks both ways and just starts edging out into this U-turn like on a normal city street. And the traffic on the other side stops and waits. Like there was no honking. Like I like to think that the drivers were begrudgingly respectful of this like move. So she like popped a U-turn in the right path, and we get there, and like it worked out fine. Everyone managed to warm up. And I heard later that the people who were already there, like the ones who had flown, were like having their sweat on. Like, where is this entire team?
They were respectful for. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I know the PUL rule set was a little different than USAU, brought in some elements of WIF-DIF. What role were the observers playing in the poll season with the poll rule set?
I believe they had. Oh, go ahead. They were similar to USAU observers, but a little more active. You had 10 seconds to resolve a call or send it to them. I believe they were active up-down calls and
Yeah, that sounds
active
right.
in-out
And
calls.
in and out. And in that play that just happened, it was Indy Red scored, and the play went back because an injury had been called elsewhere on the field. So a lot of the rules like that one are similar to USAU. Like player safety is paramount. And that actually comes into play in the way that the quarters end too. Some of the quarters end with just possession, like finish the possession that you have, and then the result is how the quarter ends. And the fourth quarter ends with a buzzer beater. And there was some discussion about like, well, buzzer beaters are pretty exciting. Like everyone, like nobody doesn't like that. But Eileen Murray of the New York Gridlock pointed out in her experience coaching the AUDL, buzzer beaters are just like asking for injuries as players gather under the disc, all jostling each other. And so she advocated and eventually prevailed to like, no, like let's limit the number of buzzer beaters in the game. And luckily we scored this. We ended up scoring this point on the redo anyway.
And as we get near the end of this first quarter, I think it might be time to put up our first trivia question of the rewind. So our first trivia question is, how many returners from the 2019 New York Gridlock roster are on the 2020 roster? So again, it's a test of speed.
Great, here we have.
At least one.
So if you want to hop on Twitter, first person to respond is going to get a pretty sweet prize, which I believe is a 2019 team photo and a 2019 Gridlock disc. So we'll get back to you at the winner in just a moment.
All right, so this was one of the things. Oh,
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say you could see Kelly Hyland coming back, kind of into that handle set, and it'll happen again on this point, as well as Linda or basically any player that's comfortable. And I think that was one of the things that I really liked about having Eileen as a coach, is that she was part of the strategy was very just open to letting us do what we're comfortable with as long as it works. You know, don't cut off your teammates. We had basic tenets of, make space for your teammates, call for the disc, and if it keeps moving, you're fine. And I think that's one of the things I really loved, is that it gave us a lot of freedom to both mess up and then correct our mistakes without a lot of micromanagement. And I think that's what led to a lot of Gridlock success.
So LP, and also for the people watching, there's like maybe, you can probably tell there's like a half a second delay. So that's why we'll probably just continue talking over each other a little bit. But LP, one question I have for you is, Coach Eileen Murray and Gridlock is like a big name coach. Have you had very many coach experiences in your ultimate career? And if so, like what difference did it make?
Yeah, so I think my first coach, it might have been Indy Red's coach that was there for, one game and half a practice. It might have been my first coach in Ultimate. I'm sorry if I'm forgetting whoever you were, if you were there. But it makes a huge difference, because I think on a lot of those teams I've also been the captain. And so having that one level of, having to be responsible for strategizing, and, I feel like the captain hat is a pretty large one where you're also coordinating everything. So having the coaches be involved to take care of the strategizing, take care of, I guess, kind of it's almost the logistics of playing, is so nice. Even especially as a player, and going from, running everything for Indy Red to having such a dominant voice like Eileen. And then, we had Izzy Bryant, who is our head coach this year, and Susie and Randall, both involved last year as well. We had this whole support staff behind us, which was really cool, and I think it also allowed Tulsa and Cassie to be more available for us as teammates and to be better leaders in that respect. So coaching makes so much of a difference, and Edith has been one of the best parts about playing professional is that we have coaches now, and it's almost like that's a guaranteed part of it.
USAU rules and
I could not agree more.
Has there been a big adjustment period though?
Not so much because we haven't had
And you do some coaching yourself.
the rules are quite similar. It's just that it's mostly USAU.
Yeah, I was going to ask you a little bit about your coaching experience and your experience with a coach on Indy Red.
So Indy Red was not the very first time I'd had a coach, but it was almost. I think on my mixed club team, Steamboat, we had a coach 1 year, and it was like wonderful, as it pretty much always is in my experience to have a coach. But, in my 17 years of playing, I've only had a coach a few times, and each year in Indy Red has been one of those times, and it like blows my mind how big a difference it can make. Because like LP, on a lot of these teams I'm captain, which has different meanings for different contexts, but often it could be described as player coach, and the player coach role has all of the normal mental challenges of playing plus mental challenges of coaching, and it can be hard to balance those at times. So I was like and in one of the early Indy Red practices, our coach this year, Blake Vanderbush, we have 3 coaches, but he's the head, and he gave me like some little note about like the footwork on a really specific upline cut and how you should like land on this part of your foot and not this part because it makes you faster. And I was like, that is not something that I could have coached myself on. Like that is the kind of like value add that you get from a coach no matter how long you've been playing. And in this game, Ryan Gorman had some great lines because he played in Cincinnati Revolution in the AUDL, so he's been where we are. He like has that experience himself, and like I think his first words were when we got to the field was, "This is going to go really quickly. Like you're gonna blink and the game will be over." So like do your best to stay focused, like really like soak in the moment each time that you're on, because you might partly black out. In between that and his loud voice in the sideline, like things like play to win, don't play scared to lose, all that kind of stuff makes a difference.
Defensive pressure gets the disc back
and that it's something I'm sensitive to because I coach, like LP said, I coach college women, and it's like possibly the most rewarding thing I've ever done. So like if anyone is on the fence about trying coaching, like I really can hardly recommend it enough. Like it makes you a better player as you help teach others. And it's really, really cool to see a player grow from someone who hasn't played the sport at all before to someone who is competing, like understands like little things in the game, who gets better than you in a lot of ways. I actually have a player in this game who I coached, Claire Schwaba. She was like big in that first couple of points, like just distributing the disc, and I'm like, this is the coolest thing. So coach someone and then play professionally with them. I could definitely riff on coaching for like a while, so I'll cut myself off there.
No, I mean, I'm excited to see more Xavier players come up into Indy Red. You've got a direct line.
We have an XU player coaching Indy Red now. So I coached her, and now she coaches me. Sam Pukish. Wow. That was pretty cool.
Great grab.
She's the one that didn't show up to Indy Red tryouts the first year.
That's right.
I'll remember that forever. She was the only Cincy player that didn't show up.
Like the whole rest of the city was there, but like LP will remember this one person.
If you're a little too
there were like 3 people that didn't show up that day, and it snowed that day. I think that was the first Indy Red tryouts that were outdoors. It snowed, and people still showed up. I think that's when I realized it was real.
Oh heck yeah! There wasn't anything.
Shut down by Brittany Kaplan there in gridlock of the dump.
Y'all have touched on this a bit throughout the stream, talking about being in Cincinnati and playing for Indy Red. But what was it like playing on two pole teams that had people coming from all over to play on this one team? Maybe people that you played with at club tournaments over the course of your career, or LP coming to New York and just playing with people from DC, Jersey, Boston, etc. What was that experience like?
The professional level. She's coached I
Uh,
believe Rumble
I
as well
mean,
in the past.
so it was
Right now,
completely
I'm speaking
different
with her
between the
earlier
two
this week.
teams
She
because
mentioned
with Indy
that,
Red,
unlike the tournament,
these are
they
all
have a couple
athletes
of
that
videos
I
to help
have
implement
played
adjustments.
against since
The single
college.
game
I've seen
format
them at,
necessitates
every
calling
club tournament
timeouts,
I've played in
making
because
changes
we're
on
all
the
in the
fly,
same
and I think in this
region.
case, taking a
Um,
moment to settle down with a
or,
number line who's
in some respects, I've
playing
known them
well,
for, 5+ years at that point,
getting big
whether or not I've
PRs
actually known their
early on in the
names
point, but then
or,
having trouble
some of them
finishing
are
it.
my
So maybe
heroes,
taking a
like Brittany
moment,
Winner,
calming
and
it
then we had
down,
Melissa Gibbs that first
reminding
year
them that they don't
are
have to hit every
athletes that I
play
have
that
been
you come
looking
up in
up
the
to
end zone.
since, the start of my
They
college.
shouldn't
And
be
then all of a
slow to
sudden,
start off the
especially with
game.
Indy Red, I was put in charge of them. And I'm just like, I have no right to tell Melissa Gibbs what to cut. Like, and same with Brittany. It's just, and so it was this really cool combination of getting to be on the same side with these women that I have, learned how to play defense because I've been guarding them for so many years. And so it was really cool to be on the same side of the disc with them. Gridlock was
Looks like they brought in Tulsa Douglas
was
to
just a
pick up the
very
disc
intimidating
coming out of this
experience, I would
timeout.
say,
Looks like
because
Tulsa has been the
it's all
main
of these
crossover player for Gridlock so
athletes that
far.
have been playing against each other,
Taken over
and
a lot of the central
especially because the high
defensive
school
talent.
scene's a lot bigger out there. They have full decades with each other, and then on top of that, you have, I guess, everyone's ultimate resume on Gridlock in particular is absurd, where there's national championships and international championships and just this all these accolades that I'm trying to fit into. And so it was a really humbling experience for one, and just really amazing to see the commitment and what it's like, from the people that have won nationals
Looked like
and get to play with
Gridlock
them
wins
and
that
be
at
on the
least.
same
Oh,
side
hey,
of the disc
Beezus
band.
lost that one in the lights. It was pretty high. That blade
is lit.
Yeah, it looked
Yeah,
very
it's
Kate,
just,
what
tricky.
was it like to
like,
bring folks
There's
from?
another really good
Oh, sorry,
offensive
LP.
point with a lot of great movement from
oh no,
Gridlock.
I was gonna
Hitting the goal.
throw it over to Kate, especially with captaining a team that was very split. Because being from different parts of the Midwest is a lot more travel hours than it is from being multiple states out here. Not to downsize or not to
Hmm.
minimize like the commitment that the players had or anything, but
Beautiful round.
coming from Milwaukee was at least a 5-hour drive, right? So,
Again, Indy Red
what was it
Oh
like
yeah,
captaining
like
everybody out?
our Milwaukee players were rock stars. I mean, they're like rock stars on the field, like Austin Pruka and Lauren Boyle, Liz Gates, and then they were just like the most dedicated teammates for driving.
In the point.
It was an all-day
Some
drive to come to
substitutions from
every
earlier in the
practice.
roll. Oh,
Um,
a
but yeah,
tough drop by
it was like a
Stasi.
dream to get the luxury of having a venue that attracts people from so far away. Like, um, like Lauren Boyle is like a Team USA coach, and she is like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to come play for this team with the others from
Yeah.
Milwaukee, or I don't even remember what other cities we had. It was pretty wild. And looking back, if there's one thing I might say was the biggest struggle, it would be that like my
Folks, I would say
personal
that
style really
about 12 to
benefits from
15 mile per hour
face-to-face
winds out here.
like interaction
Not
with
a
people,
casual throwing day.
and having a team that was so spread apart that you can't, like, you meet all of these amazing new athletes, but they live elsewhere, so you can't just like call them up and do a workout together and get to know them that way, or go throwing. All those little chemistry building things that you normally get to do with teammates when you're in a reasonable geographic area was a lot more difficult. And so now that all of Ultimate and like the whole world really is living on Zoom these days, it almost makes me think that that's something that I might bring forward. Like, Indy Red is living that like socially distanced life even without coronavirus, and so let's do like a lot more face to face, just like getting to know you kind of situations virtually.
Yeah. How do we
So I
incorporate?
think we ended up having like 4 practices because it was just so hard logistically to get everyone together. 4 practices, 5 games, 9 times that you see your teammate in person.
Wow.
Plus tryouts.
Incredible amount of space on the field, making hard cuts, moving up the field quickly, clearing hard.
And did you all feel like
some strong cuts that
you built, like each one of these games must have felt like a massive chemistry building opportunity? How did it feel going into each one and coming out of each one with all these players that you don't get to play with all that much?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That's one thing that we've practiced.
Kate, you can
Like
take it first.
impressive. Like I feel like honored to play with them. So many of these players like make huge plays that can like just change people's energy. Like, oh, if my teammate is willing to put her body on the line like that, like I am too. Like, let's go. And it just makes me think like, man, there's so little time together, but it's so high quality. How did you feel, LP?
That was a really good way to describe it. Of it is just every moment with your team counts, and I think everyone's there with that same level of commitment. I love watching Lauren Woods and Way run down on poles. They're just so fast. But yeah, I think it's that level of like everyone's there for the same reason. We all care so much, and it's all these high level athletes that we're there just to ultimately play the sport that we love. And it's kind of a side effect that we happen to be good at it.
Not quite open, and it's heartbreaking.
But yeah, I think like after. Oh, go ahead.
Keep going.
Swings it back to.
Game in, game out. It was just amazing to see all the progress, and it felt really good to have that payout for as little as we saw each other. But yeah,
I was talking to a teammate about a different game this season, and how it was our game against Nashville Nightshade, which was like a really tight game, and Nightshade actually like pulled ahead by I'd forgotten this, but they pulled ahead by like 4 points in the first quarter. And I was talking to my teammate on the D line about like, well, what changed over the course of that game, and she said like, well, we're working out like our bracket chemistry basically on the fly. Like we practice brackets in practice, but until you get against a comparable opponent, it's going to be hard to know if it's going to work. So Bolte was saying like, all right, so we tried it with like these 2 people and then these 2 people, and then we like dialed in on the correct combination, and then that worked great, and then we won the game. Like not as simple as that, but just to give a microcosm of the kinds of adjustments that you might normally do in like a tryout tournament or like a high level scrimmage, and that was happening like in front of the cameras, in front of the audience.
Mm-hmm. I'm saying one of my notes from this game was that I'm trying to find the actual point, but one of them was for sure how well you all did switches, and you stopped multiple of our pull plays. And I actually wanted to know if you were aware of our pull plays or if the switching was just something that was already in play.
I think Coach Gorman would probably be more knowledgeable about that. I want to say like we scouted you all quite a bit and had notes on each player, but it's not, the team didn't exist. It wasn't like there was a way for us to know in advance, but we were big on switching and bracketing all season. It's like my favorite way to play. It's just great. Like efficiency.
It's true. Yeah, I was gonna say I know. I think I noticed Austin, and I want to say it was Claire Schwaba, or okay, it might have been Bolte. I think I get Claire and Bolte switched up a lot, but it was one of those 2 that just constantly made our pull plays difficult.
Awesome.
Oh, and I'm just getting word that. Sorry to interrupt, but I'd be remiss to announce the correct answer for our first trivia question is none other than Sandy Canetti of Ulti Photos fame. If you play Ultimate anywhere in the Northeast, perhaps anywhere, you've met Sandy around, and I'm totally unsurprised he got the first Gridlock trivia question. An amazing guy. and he wins the prize of a 2019 Gridlock team photo and a 2019 disc. So congratulations,
took the
Sandy.
photo.
Oh, that's true. You could probably print this out of your house, but this one will be special. And this takes us to our second question that will take us into halftime. Again, you can answer this on Twitter at NY_Gridlock. So the second question is, how many different club teams are represented on New York Gridlock? How many different club teams are represented on New York Gridlock? And again, all over the East Coast, this number might be higher than you think. So think on this one, sports fans, as we head into halftime in a bit.
Their style is go big.
So
what about
that's funny that was the
Red?
question. How many club teams on Red? I haven't tallied it up, but it was quite a few. It was probably at least
Tucker looks upfield to Cassie Wong, who tries
6
to
or
save a low
7
disc, but not quite.
on Indy Red, to be clear, for those of you trying to answer the trivia question. But that was something I learned really shortly before this game, LP, was that I had kind of thought that the coaches of Gridlock might try to lift an existing women's club program like New York Bent, for example, and form it into a professional team. And I could see a lot of advantages to doing it that way, like all this chemistry stuff that we're talking about. You could skip over a lot of it. And I found out from Eileen that or the other coaches, that that's not the strategy they followed. Like they followed a pretty wide field. And so both Red and Gridlock ended up with like a professional team that incorporates elements of a bunch of USAU club teams, but for totally different reasons. Like Indy did not have an established like high level women's program. I don't think that's like controversial to say. Like they have really good women players, but they're not going to nationals. And the New York area has like potentially something else. So I thought that was an interesting strategic decision, and I actually really admired that, because that points towards like building something new rather than taking something that exists and like polishing it. Like both are valid, but one of those seems like maybe a little harder.
She went for it.
Yeah, and I think that definitely, I think I can speak for Eileen and Izzy, the coaching staff here. They definitely have been approaching it with a program building vision, where we even, in the 2 practices we had this year, started working on defenses where they said, we don't expect you to perfect it this season. It's just, we're setting the building blocks, and that's just going to happen next season. And I think that speaks to what you were saying about being able to build something new. This is for the PUL. This isn't just USAU plus type thing. And so I think it more speaks to, this is something that's ours, I guess.
Here we go.
Mm-hmm. That's a good way to put it.
Pulls inbounds.
I think we're getting close to halftime. The score is still super tight. It's 4-5 in favor of Gridlock. And Indy's coming out on O here. And I actually don't remember how this plays out. We'll see.
They're doing a lot more poaching in the middle of the field.
We will see. And again, this first half of this game was super exciting.
Yeah.
Sorry to
interrupt. I would say Juleon, the whole game was really exciting, like maybe for different reasons at different times.
And while it looked like Indy Red had beaten the poachers in the middle of the field, they
definitely, the different plays in this first half for different goals were really dope. I remember a really amazing IO, I think maybe lefty backhand from someone on Indy Red at 4-3. I know Beezus had some amazing grabs to score goals. And you're totally right. It just continues on in the second half. I was glad I got prime seating for this one in real time.
And that's the terminology that
heck yeah.
been using with us for defense.
Yeah, so that first throw from Nicole to beat the poach, I think it's a testament. It was a lot of fun to watch points with you and Nicole on, because both of you have some of the best vision, like the field vision in the game, and then not only that, but the ability to put the disc there, and it just takes the straightest path possible.
to say that was one of
Um,
those where the hometown crowd
where
helped out a little bit with the
I
alcohol.
Yeah,
think there are
I
very
agree.
few
It's a little
throwers
hard with the fans on
that
the far
have that
sideline.
same
But
ability.
K-Spall's one of those players,
I
like, you're going to
still
tell
have
her it's up, she
remember,
will
I think it was
look
the
for it
first
and
game
get it.
against
So,
I really want to get onto that
Nashville,
show
our
myself
first year
and
with Indy
say, if
Red,
you'll allow me, I'd like to
when
take point one of that
I
deal.
think you threw 8 different players, like just right in the middle of them for the goal. It was amazing.
but that's
And all of us,
another
like
part of it.
I
That's
remember
such a
how
fun jump
zoned
zone
in you were on it, and you
thrown
just
by Indy Red.
like the disc was going to get to that spot. That was
Moving the disc
like
out of the hole there.
it
After a few minutes,
was
LP
amazing.
downfield.
LP,
It
I
was
appreciate
very
that. And
cinematic.
also, that was like hilariously ironic to have that talk right then, because on the screen, I have the disc and I see Jamie streaking into the end zone. I'm like, I'm going to hit this, like, bam. And as a coaching item, like a friend just used this term, and I'm totally going to steal this. They called that trying to hit a flash, like something that looks beautifully open just for like a second. And if I had like paused there for just a little longer to assess the situation, I would have seen that there were 2 defenders covering that person and probably would not have put it.
And they're moving it through the wall. I think it's more of like a wall.
Case
But
also
hey,
has a
you're
habit of
right over
Giselle
words.
is waiting over there on the sideline. Yeah, ready to swing to her.
I think every Ultimate player has fallen victim to a flash many times in the course of their career. It,
Oh.
Yeah, I've never heard it like given a term, so that I like that.
K-Spall and LD.
Yeah.
definitely.
All right, that's half.
It's a lot of
And that's one of the
It looks
cases
like.
of ending on possession.
And a quarter is in
Mm-hmm.
the books.
Ending on possession, right. Yeah, so not
And
quite
as
as
we
exciting as a buzzer beater. Much safer for players, and I think still coherent for the audience. Like, okay, the clock has run out. The half is over after this possession ends, and you can still score. Ideally, you would.
And as we head into halftime, I wanted to give one more shout out to the National Bailout Fund. New York Gridlock has a team mission that centers racial, gender, socioeconomic inequity, especially in times of crisis. And if there is an occasion for us to rise up and utilize our privileged identities to help folks impacted most, that time is now. And Gridlock is rallying around the National Bailout Fund, as I mentioned at the top of our cast. And that fund is working towards, on Mother's Day, trying to get as many Black mothers out of pretrial detention as possible, working to end mass incarceration. So if you do have some spare funds, we highly encourage you to donate if you can. A big shout out to Utah Wild, who has pledged a donation to the National Bailout. It's rad to see all of these pro-women's teams working together to such a really important goal. But yeah, I don't know, LP, Kate, if you all wanted to mention anything in particular before we head into our halftime break. Kate, I know you. What really stood out to you in the first half of this game as a player in real time?
I distinctly remember as a player feeling like I'm rolling up to New York and we'll just like put out our best, but I have zero knowledge of what to expect. And so after this half, I felt like we made a proud showing. We like had some big plays. Both sides showed that they can really stretch the field and like I mean this in the most positive way possible, but like and also be imperfect. Because I think that's a big mental thing that a lot of people struggle with. Like you're facing a big opponent, you best, and a lot of times it just takes like a little mental switch to say like they are human too. Like they are going through all the same things we are. They're facing the same conditions. And that's like as a mental toughness aspect, I think that's a big one.
Yeah, LP, as someone who was watching the game, I'm sure very hungry to get out there. What were your thoughts as this first half came to a close?
I think it kind of goes back to being torn, being very excited that Gridlock was up. And I think kind of to what Kate was saying, in the most positive way of seeing all those mistakes happen on both sides, knowing that I think because I was really nervous about our first game and being perfect and never making mistakes and kind of having that moment of, okay, everybody's human and we're all conquering it. I was so proud of both teams for, they made mistakes, but I don't think I saw that on any of them. I don't think I would have, all of them were playing through it. And I thought both teams were showing really good mental toughness in that aspect of, yes, we have nerves, but yes, we're still here to play. Really good ultimate. And, the plays that were awesome were awesome. And, this is why it all happened. Because they're phenomenal athletes and capable of so much.
And Juleon,
Yeah.
can you tell us what was going on at halftime now? Like I remember being like really excited about who was there at the halftime.
This halftime, to celebrate the first professional women's ultimate game in New York, they brought out the members of Survival, the first women's club team in New York City. And it was really amazing as a New York City ultimate player to see this bit of really powerful history. To see these amazing women and non-binary athletes take the field playing professional ultimate, reflected by some of the folks that had led the charge many decades before. And the crowd was incredibly hyped, incredibly excited to see these athletes take the field again in front of their hometown crowd. So it was a really special moment, I think, for all the New York City Ultimate players in attendance, for sure.
I thought that was the coolest thing to have those celebrity guests at halftime. And I wanted to meet them and just hear their life stories right then, but obviously was somewhat distracted by recovering from the half. You mentioned psychologist Annie Chandler earlier. Was she actually there at this game?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, she was walking out with them. And we actually have Gridlock has a documentary about them. I don't know if you got to see that, where they did interviews with 4 or 5 of them, I think.
I'll definitely check that out.
Yep, up on the YouTube channel. We'll plug it.
Definitely take a visit to the Gridlock YouTube. There are a couple of really rad documentaries up there. And you should definitely take a look at the one on Survival. But I believe we're about to take a quick break going into halftime. But before we do, I'd like to give a quick to our sponsors. We have Match Fit Performance, New York Gridlock's sports performance team. Match Fit, through the support of Rena and Irwin, Gridlock's athletes are able to stay connected and healthy through virtual physical therapy and coaching services. If you have specific goals and want an individualized plan, or you're recovering from an injury and need guidance for getting back to 100%, send an email to team@matchfitperformance.com and tell them that Gridlock sent you. We also want to give a big shout out to VC, the Premier Ultimate League's uniform sponsor. VC Ultimate is the official uniform and merchandise partner of the Premier Ultimate League. As one of the league's presenting sponsors, VC has made sure that our players have the highest quality uniforms on their backs, and our fans are outfitted in the coolest official gear, including that amazing sponsorship sponsor-player situation. Visit the New York Gridlock team store at vcultimate.com to pick up a hat, shirt, jersey, and more. We also want to thank Discraft, the official disc of Premier Ultimate League, and we want to thank Spin, Pull's live stream presenting sponsor. This game footage was presented by Spin Ultimate, and we're so glad to have it once again for this rewind. So we're going to take a quick break, show a few commercials from our sponsors, and we will be back very soon. Welcome back. I'm sure you just had a moment to go get some water, grab a breather. But we are back here at the second half of the New York Gridlock Indy Red. First game of both seasons in the 2019 inaugural Premier Ultimate League season. My name is Juleon Robinson. I use he, him pronouns. I'm here with Kate McInerney of Indy Red and Lauren Piontek of New York Gridlock. We are about to dive into the second half. Yeah, I know, LP, you weren't at this game, but what were the halftime talks like for a pro game? We've talked a little bit about the differences between pro and club, but I'm sure the halftime talk is pretty significant because there's so little game time to get things right.
Our halftime talk was focused on recovering physically, like putting your needs like at top of mind for the duration of the half so that you can come out strong in the second half. I feel like I remember our coach saying some smart things, but I kind of blacked it out. Like there's certain parts of this game that I see it on the film and I'm thinking like, I actually don't remember that, even though it was like I lived it. It did go fast, just like you said it would. I'm interested in what Gridlock's halftime is. This particular quarter is going to have some really big plays on both sides, honestly. And Gridlock, I think, might show a certain like shift in mentality.
Yeah, I would say like obviously the halftime talk works here. Such a good D. Doodle doesn't get skied often. Or
so
blocked,
can I
for that
shout
matter.
out my teammate there? My teammate Ashley
Yes.
Farnkoff is one of those people that I think Premier Ultimate League is built to like showcase because she is in this small market in Cincinnati, doesn't play for like a really huge women's team like Fury or Riot, but she plays several ways really smart in this game, and that was one of them. Just like tracking that long disc and like hitting it in a trajectory that the opponent can't get there. So I think she's like kind of a unsung person. And I just wanted to like shout that out. She has a couple of like good separation moments too.
We go. We got some penalty movement. Find Linda downfield. Takes off LD.
I'm looking at my notes. Farnkoff is 99. Is the player I'm talking about.
Lauren Boyle.
That connection there is the Boyle to Oland connection. Lauren Boyle is not actually normally a handler from what I can tell, but because we needed her in that role on Red, she just did it like uncomplainingly. And she crushed it. She and Austin Kruga had some really big chemistry moments. Juleon actually has a good note as commentator in this game when he was doing the live commentating. He called it pockets of chemistry, where players who already know each other going in just like are able to read each other's intentions really well.
I think it was between two Gridlock players, and that's why it will end up being a turnover.
Oh, and I was gonna say, you mentioned Lauren Boyle not being a natural handler. I think Duds has had number 17, Kristen Dudley on Red multiple times this game. Has been kind of one of, like, I would say it's similar to the unsung hero type thing, where I think she's a phenomenal player that her name's not very well known, but I think we got about halfway through the season with Indy Red before I knew she wasn't a natural handler, or that she actually prefers cutting. And she just fills whatever role you need.
Teammates like that are huge.
I think at this point,
you tell them what you need. You tell them what you need, and they say like, "I am going to do that to the very best of my ability, and not wish that it was something different, even if they do." I think you were going to mention this play, right, LP?
I was just gonna say this was watching this game, and this might just be bad memory, but watching this game, I thought Gridlock had really good end zone patience most of the time, and just some beautiful swings. And we had multiple points like that.
Well, that one
for those things like I don't remember. Oh, go ahead.
That one was like a break,
not making any
I
mistakes,
think up the
really
middle.
seeing the throws as they develop.
Gridlock
And
used the
finding
break
open
space
direction to
really
take us out of
well
the end zone for that goal.
in this quarter in particular. I think it stands out at a couple of moments where everyone on the defense downfield is on our side, and
2 receivers who are both going for the disc.
yeah. Yeah, there's elite handlers who can break the mark at will.
Going for the disc
I think require a somewhat different way of handling it. But anyone at any level can recognize an open break space and practice that throw, or try it in the game and see what they need to adjust to, because it really opens up the entire field. You have a solid couple of seconds there where you can put it all the way to the other side and then be in an advantageous position, and Gridlock takes advantage.
Got Goran picking up in the middle of the field.
And
downfield, finds a
it looks like we have a correct answer for our second trivia question. It goes to Therese Ross at Convo's Count. With the correct answer for the question was, how many different club teams are represented on Gridlock? The answer was 9. And those teams were AMP, Bent, Brute Squad, Jug Handle, Rebel, Scandal, Space Heater, Westchester Loco, and Exist.
That was a really quick hold by Indy Red. I think that
so pulling teams from all over the region and
of the game, and
both the women's division and the mixed division.
One of the few so far, and it was just a clean.
And I know Kate and LP, you both play in the mixed division and club. Do you want to talk a little bit about what it was like playing in the poll on? Yeah.
We'll see in a few of the O-line points coming up later.
LP, do you want to take it first?
Really tangible adjustments.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people got their start, or a lot of female athletes, non-binary, got their start with mixed, whether that was league or for me it was that was what was available in my area. And I got very lucky to have teams that highlighted their female players. And so I grew up loving
mixed. It's a beautiful night. It's a beautiful place to be playing.
And I still do.
To have this first professional women's ultimate game.
We have Tucker with the disc.
So it was really weird. And I actually had a bad experience playing women's in college. So I was a little nervous about kind of going all into the PUL from that standpoint. But, it's an awesome strategy switch, and I think, an environment switch as well. And I think overall, I think part of the PUL is just this very supportive environment where we're all here to lift each other up. Even at tryouts, when you're trying to beat somebody out for a spot, I think we were all cheering for each other at the same time. And so I think it's it's both switching from club and a mixed mentality, and it's been nothing but great.
Judy has the disc on the end zone.
Kate.
Judy finds number 4, Stasi.
Playing women's is really dear to my heart. I love playing women's. There's just strategic and cultural differences that tend to happen on mixed and women's teams, and neither one is better than the other. And they also, my generalizations here very well might not apply to any particular individual team, but the way I've normally seen it play out is on women's, things are a little bit more flexible on the field. You can swap players out with more freedom, in part just because of that logistical challenge of having 3 men or 3 women on the line isn't there. So there's just it takes out one of those big factors to consider. And on the other side, mixed has that big factor. You, in addition to your handlers and your cutters and your deeps or whatever positions you're playing, you also have this gender issue that you cannot get around. You have to put the correct gender ratio on the field, and that's a fun challenge too. It kind of depends on which of those things you want to play with more. Do you want to play with having anyone on the field be able to bracket and switch, or do you want to play with maybe putting on a zone that has all of your women up front and all of your tallish dudes in back and take advantage of mismatches. Both of them like have really fun strategic challenges that way, and so I'm grateful that I get to do both.
Good for Dre on the break side.
Yeah, we just had that layout D from Cassie, and I think that was kind of our turning point.
Cassie's in the end zone alone.
Yeah, and Cassie has a
Cassie's
couple
layout.
of
Oh my gosh,
really
it
amazing
was
defensive plays in
huge.
this game.
Tulsa for the score.
I think they replay it now.
Yeah.
But I think that was, I think Cassie like got everyone that finally turned the switch.
Who got that layout D here on the near sideline.
Yeah, and I will say this was one of those moments where it's very clear that this was a professional game, at least from the crowd standpoint, because Cassie got that layout D on the sideline nearest the crowd, and everyone went absolutely crazy. And just that energy was really exciting. And then Gridlock turned it right into a goal. Did LP, over the course of the season, did you feel that energy affect you on the field, whether it was the home crowd or the away crowd, making things difficult or easier?
Preferred gender pronouns, so you notice we are using gendered pronouns, and those got that information beforehand. And
I definitely, I mean, like the energy of the home crowd, I think especially in New York, was phenomenal. I think at first it added a little bit to the nerves, you know, the need, you know, at first you have that like kind of need of like, okay, we got to make big plays, you know, losing's not an option here. I would say the first away crowd was tough, you know, because I think having that home energy behind you that gives you that extra boost, that extra kick in the butt to excel, and then you have the away crowd that they're not there for you. You know, it's your scores are not what they're cheering for. And that was tough, especially, I mean, Raleigh especially, because we had to deal with the temperature factor as well. And it was pretty tough mentally, because I think we had that extra element of getting past the heat, plus getting past the fact that we don't have extra people there to support us when we are a little bit down to push us.
And again, this was the first PUL game for I think both of
On the game for a moment.
I think this is the
some jitters in the first half.
I was gonna say this is the point Brittany is MVP. Yeah.
Oh hell yeah. Yeah, Brittany Winter gets that give and go, and then a big crossfield blade look right to Jamie. She gets it back again and distributes it up for the goal. Yeah, she was everywhere. That was I think that was a pretty smooth O-line hold for us. And then coming on here, if I'm identifying my own line correctly, I think we're putting out a universe D line, because at this point in the game, we know from the sideline that this is going to be a really big point. Like the difference between Indy scoring to make it 8-7 so that the game stays that tight, or Gridlock scoring to pull away by 3 is, I don't want to overstate it, but like is a relatively big difference from like winnability of the game. So we have a kill D-line out here with some people from offense coming on.
Ooh, you almost got that. Is that Nicole?
I know.
Yeah, it was Nicole.
Yeah, it was Nicole and Sydney like coming down really hard on that pole, like you want your D to do. I think everyone in this line is very energized for this point.
Judy. So I think this is the point Juleon even commented on in real time. But Judy Jarvis, number 3, and then Linda Morse, who I think is 21.
Let's see if
Oh,
we get the D.
It's obvious. I think those 2 players are 2 of the best off-disc people that I've gotten to play with, where all of their movements are very intentional. And if they don't get the disc, that's not a wasted cut. They know the exact timing and places they need to be to open space for the team. And I think we'll see it at the end of this point. Linda just makes this phenomenal clear to open it up for the disc to Kelly. But I think both of them, just if you watch them, it's one of those cases when you tell kids not to watch the disc when they're trying to watch film, is pay attention to what they're doing off the disc. You know, they hold the stack when they need to hold it, and they cut when they need to cut, and they're doing nothing is selfish.
39, Sydney Dobkin.
There was like a pack of 4 people who I think might all be like world's caliber players in the end zone there. And it looks like a foul is called and the disc goes back.
Thank you for that segue, Kate, into our next trivia question. Again, we're running, amazing how it just works out like that. We have our next trivia question will result in a Necky and a 2019 Gridlock disc. So we're taking answers on the Twitter over at NY_Gridlock. The next question is, how many New York Gridlock players attended World's tryouts?
In 2020?
Again, yes, the most recent World's tryouts. Again, the first correct response will win a Necky and a 2019 Gridlock disc.
From Tucker to Sydney.
The Neckies are very high quality.
Oh yeah, they're nice.
This is when Sarah catches everything. Yes.
With the disc, that was a very contested
So this is that same
cut from the
big
defense of
point
Indy, but Sarah came with it. Came down with it.
after a stoppage or two.
Give Tucker to Beezus.
And Gridlock's use of space and vision right there was really lovely. Like ideally, every goal would just be to an open person moving into space.
And we are 6-9. Shout out to Eileen. It's very nice.
Yeah, Kelly Highland to Sadie Dobkin. Really, both of them had great.
I do have another Eileen-based question.
Ooh.
And that's, it can be really difficult to establish a cohesive in-zone offense. And this may be an Ultimate Nerds question, but with so little practice time, how much time do both of your teams spend on the in-zone sets in particular? I know in the second half of this game, Gridlock's in-zone offense looks way better than in the first. And I'm just wondering, is that something that both of your teams spend a lot of practice time on, or did you need to use that time, that limited time, on other aspects of the game? Kate, how did Indy Red handle things?
That's a good question. I think I sometimes get like my Steamboat plays and my Red plays mixed up because there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of player overlap, and then in this game we're watching now, we also have a Steamboat coach, Foreman. I want to say that we mostly identified the plays that people were currently familiar with. So our O-line, I think 5 out of 7 of our O-line players here are all from Steamboat, so we don't have to like reinvent the wheel. Instead, we spent comparatively more time on like defensive sets and switching.
Here we go. One open side, cut is open.
How'd that go for you, LP?
Looking downfield, looking back to cut.
We
It's a nice dump cut there.
This might be terrible. I don't remember us having a lot of plays outside of the ISO, but that was very kind of on point for Eileen's approach to this, of giving us this base for us to fall back on. So, you know, if the disc was on the open side of the stack, it was more than likely going to be the front of the stack cutting, and then if it got a big swing to the back, like to the break side, that should be the back of the stack cutting for that. And kind of just falling back on that and erring on the side of don't get in your teammates' way. You know, everything you're doing is to make space for your teammates. So even, especially even if you were behind the disc once your end zone got set, just stay in the back until it was a good opportunity to get into that stack. Don't get in the way. And, I'd say just about every practice involved just end zone scrimmage for some amount of time, just to continue working on that chemistry and timing and our defense and everything involved there. So yeah, it was. We spent a lot of time on end zone.
Gridlock played a vertical stack. I was saying, sorry for interrupting you, but I wanted to point out that Gridlock played a ton of vertical stack in this game, and this point is a great example of how the vert stack can get you major yards downfield before you get to the end zone, and then right outside the end zone, Gridlock spread out horizontally, using the whole width of the field and taking advantage of that break space.
There was a huck up field by K-Spot. There was an opportunity for transition, and Gridlock decided.
Our end zone movement here was phenomenal.
Douglas, Amy Zhao in the backfield.
Yeah, this is actually something I noticed while watching this game, that it seemed like Indy Red played a lot of host stack. And I don't know if that comes from the club teams that y'all play on, or if it's a regional thing. I have a general sense that in the Northeast, there folks play a lot of vert stack, especially coming out of Boston. But how did it feel going out and matching up against a team, Kate, that played a different style of offense than the one that your own team plays and that you practice against the most? Is it a little tougher?
It's certainly different. Like just the spacing and like the angles that you're taking away are totally different. My biggest association with vert stack at this point, I think, was probably how I learned Ultimate with the vert stack. Back in like the early 2000s, when like the strategies just weren't quite as like sophisticated. And then over time, I learned more host stack and got to enjoy that better and see the pros and cons of each. Like one thing I sometimes think in horizontal stack is it really works great if you have 4 cutters who are about similar abilities and speeds, and then you can just cycle through them in those 4 horizontal stack positions. Whereas vert stack is really good for highlighting different people's strengths. Like you have someone who just like loves streaking long, and someone else who really likes to work it under, and they can be like a backup option, or the first option even if they've got a big cannon on them. So I tend to think it kind of depends on like who you have on the line for which of those two makes more sense in a given moment. But it was a little bit of a throwback to be like, oh, I'm guarding a vert stack again.
Oh man, this play.
That's a nasty grab. Cassie Wong was just everywhere in this game. I definitely became a Cassie Wong fan after this. Even playing against her, I was like, I can't even be mad.
But it seems like they have cleaned up their offense.
Yeah, she
I
is
remember
and it really
a
is
presence.
the difference between a couple of execution.
I just remember watching Stasi make this super long up line cut. Like she throws it 10 yards downfield and then gets like a 15-yard up line cut to get in power position for this hack, for the roommate connection, which is pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
I will say, like, in the
Also,
first half,
extra
they were
shout
using
out
their
to
looks,
Cassie. She's on the
differentiating,
front
making the right
lines.
decision, opening up the right looks.
She works in a hospital. I don't know if they're still doing it, but they were doing a GoFundMe for protective equipment a while ago. I think Gridlock plugged it a while back, and I'll retweet that again. Cassie's a boss on and off the field.
Third quarter, I think Indy Red has called.
One thing I
She
think
also
is really
coaches
helpful.
NYU.
Some adjustments they might be able to make.
No, wait, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Haley, I know you might want
One thing I think is really helpful for players is to pick somebody who has a similar style to them and follow that person's career or follow their filmed games and see like what is it that they're doing that's successful. And so when I was thinking about the athletes that I coach, I recommended one of them do that with Cassie Wong, and I like sent her some links. Like, this player reminds me of you in the future. Like, you can do this. You're already like throwing your body around and seeing these spaces and moving in these ways. I think you'll get there faster if you watch this person who has a similar style but with a lot more experience under her belt, and that may save you some of that like trial and error that otherwise you'd have to go through.
Yeah,
but it's one reason
awesome.
that
That's a really
so
good point.
important to have these filmed games, like to have exposure to high level women's athletics.
And I'll take this moment as we have a break in the action to really.
Oh yeah, that's.
Again,
I think when I was in college, the only women's film I was able to get a hold of was like an Alti Village highlight reel. It's super grainy. I still have it saved, like it's bookmarked, and I watch it every once in a while. But like that's all that was there in college.
Coming to watch the upstate players and the Philly players as well. I've seen people in the crowd who are
You're absolutely right. That's so important to have this film.
Kind of a trek, but it's great to see how excited they are for their players.
I was thinking earlier today about the difference between women's athletics being the exception versus just being ubiquitous. And the PUL is a big step toward being ubiquitous. Think of a average league player. They might see one women's ultimate highlight reel or like a cool play on SportsCenter like every once in a while, maybe a couple a year before the PUL, if they weren't going out and looking for it. And then meanwhile, they're thinking, well, the women that I play with in the leagues are on average less experienced, like less athletic than the men is often the comparison they're making, with a couple of exceptions. And then when you put something like this out there and say, like, it's not the exception, there's an abundance of amazing women athletes, then it becomes just more normalized.
And I will say it's also rad for young men to see amazing women and non-binary athletes like ball out all over the field, and just from a young age, just tear down that gender binary of sports are in the man's domain. And I love that all this PUL footage is getting out there. To break that down as much as possible. And here I think we have a goal from Christy Kelly, who between 2019 and 2020 moved down to DC and helped start DC Shadow. And I just want to give a shout out to Christy, who in DC Shadow, who I believe are having a live event later tonight. You can probably find some info about that on social media. Check it out if you can. Always good to big up all the PUL teams that are still going real strong on social media throughout the COVID-19 quarantine.
Julian, you mentioned that it's cool for men to see women athletes too, and I completely agree. One really cool moment for me was when my jersey with the player sponsorship program through DC went to like a contest, and the person who ended up winning the contest was like a young man in my community, and I found out later that like he's like wearing my jersey around, and I'm like, that is so cool.
It's hard to play defense if marks are getting broken all over the place. Let's see if Indy Red can tighten it up with this O point right here.
Absolutely.
And I think now's a great time to shout out the winner of our third trivia question. Twitter user Bosselite has won. And again, the question was, how many Gridlock players attended Worlds tryouts? And the answer was 11.
Oh, dang, I guess 9.
Even more than you thought, LP. Yeah, some great Gridlock
sorry,
representation.
Sorry.
Just a testament to,
I think it was the first practice I went to where it was like half this field was at Worlds tryouts last weekend. It's crazy.
Switch on the defense there down.
Oh, that was one of the examples of a good switch by Indy Red. And this is where, not yet. I think this is one of those points where you very much see why Austin became Defensive Player of the Year.
Look like they've been playing together for years.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to that. It's also a point where I think if I remember rightly, we see in the next few minutes, probably the next quarter, both teams just like airing it out a lot with really big
that was
throws.
something. Oof, wow.
Wow, Kruga.
It does seem like throughout the course of this game, the teams loosen up a little bit. And I was wondering if you all found that to be a feature of all of the games you played in, or if this was just some of those nerves in the first half of this one. But the second half of this game, it seems like both teams loosen up a ton and just start taking more and more looks deep and hitting them too.
Oh, big time. Here's something I talked with a couple of my teammates before this game was, is it more fun to watch an Ultimate game with like the world's most amazing possession where you pass it up the field in small pieces until you score? Or is it more fun to watch people take shots? And like, maybe that sounds like you think you know the answer, but we actually had like some split and some debate about that. But it absolutely was in the back of my mind, at least, that taking the shot is an option, and maybe even a good option. Like if you don't have something pretty solid underneath, like air it out.
What do you want to see out of Indy Red to sort of go on a run?
LP, what does that face mean?
So I am definitely on the side of I want small ball all the way. But I understand the other side of it, but I think that was I think what Kate said was like, we are teams that are building chemistry and maybe don't have the most solid foundation. But one thing that we do have is that we're all athletic. So worst case of airing it out, you gain 50 yards instead of turning it close to your end zone, and you get a cool play out of it. And I think but I think it was definitely this game and other ones. I think all of them, that first half, first quarter, we're all just getting nerves out and finding our rhythm every game.
It's also a
And
little bit
so,
of a difference, in my opinion, between playing club and playing professionally. Is in club, realistically, we're playing for ourselves. Like we're playing for the glory of our teammates, peers in the club. In the professional league, we're playing for people watching from elsewhere. So in club, I definitely prefer more small ball, like more throws. That's like honestly my favorite thing. Like if I can just like touch the disc a billion times, that is fun for me. In the PUL, there's a certain part of me that thinks like this isn't really for us. It's for people watching. And so, not that I want to just have a huck fest, but the balance is a little bit different in my mind.
yeah.
As we head into this, I believe we're in the fourth quarter now. I want to give us our fourth trivia question. Again, you can answer these trivia questions. First correct answer gets the prize. And you can tweet at us at NY_gridlock. The winner of this fourth trivia question will receive a t-shirt and a 2019 Gridlock disc and a 2019 team photo. So really get by your Twitter ASAP. And we have actually already given you a little hint to this one earlier in the rewind. The question is, what college ultimate team runs the unofficial Cassie Wong fan club? And I believe we're looking for the school and the team name. Although our media folks will definitely let you know if you got it right. So,
Am I
what
allowed
college
to
team?
tweet an answer? No.
I think you might be disqualified, Elfie. I'm sorry.
That's fair.
As we head into this fourth quarter, I also wanted to give another shout out to the National Bailout Fund, which Gridlock is working to raise donations for. And Gridlock is actually partnering with LA Astra from the WUL for a little East Coast West Coast competition to see who can raise the most money. So stay tuned for that competition. I don't know, folks in Indy, which side you're going to take on this one, if you're going to be on the East Coast or West Coast side. But please definitely take a moment if you can, if you have the resources again, to donate to the National Bailout Fund. It's going to help Black mothers get out of pretrial detention ahead of Mother's Day so they can be at home with their families. Especially during, this COVID-19 crisis, being imprisoned, especially in pretrial detention, is particularly unjust. So we're trying to raise money to help out with that effort. Please give what you can. You have the website there at the bottom of your screen.
So the point that just happened was the first point of the fourth quarter. Red was on offense. There was a couple of turnovers, but we got it back, I think, on D's both times, if I recall rightly. And then we held for the score coming into the fourth quarter. And the one thing that makes me think of is I don't know if it came through on this stream because we're not doing necessarily like a play-by-play, but Gridlock had an absolutely enormous third quarter. Like Gridlock went from having 6 points to having 12 points at the end, because they are just like on fire. And it wasn't that like we gave up by any means. I think Gridlock just had a really solid quarter. And so coming into fourth quarter, Indy Red's down 6-12 at that point. You might think that we were like feeling bummed, but I don't remember feeling that way. I remember feeling really, really focused on the moment that whatever we do, the game is going to end in like 12 minutes. like you have to keep playing that whole time. That's one difference. Between PUL and USAU is we're not playing to a score, we're playing to a time. You're like, you have to be there. And I remember looking back with pride on how present everyone was. So this fourth quarter felt different to me, just mentally.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Here we go, like that.
Yeah, LP, did you?
Mix it up, Sydney.
I know you weren't there for this game, but what was it like to play to a time and to go into fourth quarters of games, not knowing that you need to not just score, but need to score quickly?
Right. Time clock management was a whole, I guess, or not management, but just playing for time. We got lucky. I got lucky of having that first year with Red under my belt of kind of it wasn't a shock anymore, but it's still just, it's a tough adjustment to kind of be like, it's helpful, but it's pretty much like the score doesn't matter. Like, why are you, like, this game doesn't end based on the score, so stop paying attention to it. And I think that was one of those elements where it was really nice to have coaches involved for them to be the ones that were paying attention to it. I think if the onus was on us to pay attention to what time it was and not have the coaches, kind of give us like, okay, we can take our time now, or kick it into gear. You score, we lose, so get it together. And so I think that I think having coaches for this timed element is really, I think it'd be almost impossible without them mentally. Because it's one more thing to worry about.
Gridlock still gets to hold.
Yeah, what about you, Kate? Because I know Gridlock did some talks on the switches. What did Indy Red do any more this year? Because I think Indy Red was a lot newer or had a lot more new players.
Yeah, we ended up with, I want to say 11 new players from the 2019 to the 2020 season, and we got some weekday practices under our belt, and then like one big solid weekend practice. You were asking about switches to the rules, is that right?
Oh, is it?
I started
just like with
reminiscing
time management, like. Like how did you all address like the fact that you were timed instead of scored in this case?
Scores 13-7, Gridlock up.
Yeah, it was just it was just part of like the whole thing. Like the whole thing just felt different from other games that we're accustomed to. I want to focus like on the differences because this was our first game, and so everything just felt new. But like I don't know, after the first game or two, it felt like oh, okay, this is normal now. This is our new thing. Like we can do this. What was your first game like, LP, with Gridlock?
Downfield for Indy Red all game.
Oh man, I was so nervous. It helped that we had some sort of it was the Pride game, and we had a clinic beforehand.
Oh, the D is missed, but
it was
us airing it out.
Yeah.
Gotta take your shot.
It's a great example. Duds had a great throw, Kristen Dudley, to get it to Bree to get it to this point though. Right before that, it was weird from the perspective of like we had the fans in Indy, and I knew a really good portion of the crowd there. Where it switched to I knew almost no one in the crowd in New York. I knew Luke and I knew Scott Schwartz, who I had dinner with once before that, like with Luke and everything. So I think it was a weird switch from that perspective of just like not having the same relationship with the crowd but it quickly switched as, even though most of the crowd didn't really know me personally, like they were still cheering for my team. They were cheering, I guess from a more selfish perspective. But, they were still there to cheer for me in some respects, so it helped.
Oh yeah, crowd energy makes such a difference. Like we had a big Cincinnati contingent travel down to Nashville for our game, and like to hear them be like, "Keep going" and using our name, like, that makes a difference for sure.
They need him coming up in these next couple minutes.
They definitely do.
Like to kind of go back to clock management, it's really good that Gorman had experience with the AUDL before, because I think that was one thing that was really comforting about having Eileen and her coaching resume behind us, is that she's really good at clock management and timeouts. And you could, I think one of the rules we haven't talked about was you could sub at timeouts, and she used those really strategically. And I think especially in games like this where there were some long points at the beginning, like, that subbing was key. Get fresh legs out there.
Yeah, hugely. Yeah, I remember feeling like so much trust that like our coach knew when to call the TO, when to switch people out, and that we'd done all that pre-work so that we weren't wasting time on the line.
Downfield who puts it up.
I wish we had that timeout switching ability in Club Ultimate. That'd be cool.
Oh my gosh, that would be game changing.
Yeah.
Oh, this is another.
What were the rules that?
Point.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was gonna say this was another point where we got the Stasi KK matchup. Kristen Kavik, number 45 on Indy Red.
With the disc, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you're right. They both have that like quickness to them that makes for a fun matchup.
Really hard here and getting open a lot.
So I know that
Stasi
you two
also coaches. But sorry, I was just gonna do a little shout out. Stasi also coaches, but go ahead.
It's true. I was gonna ask. I know you two knew each other going into the season. But what was it like to build camaraderie through the PUL? Just like playing. I don't know if you got this to feel that you were playing players that you had never played before, playing against them, playing with them. But did you feel like there was a growing camaraderie among all PUL players over the course of the season?
Definitely. I mean, so even in Gridlock, we would do our best to find each other at every tournament. And I know if I was able to run into Indy Red players at other places, that was really awesome. And then even, I think mostly focused on players or teams we got to play, like running into a couple Seoul players, and at tournaments and being able to like kind of bond over that was really nice. It's really cool to just see it spread.
The PUL itself is player-led, so there's when we have board calls, like the board of directors gets together and there's representatives from every team, and so that means that as much as I like want to win this game against Gridlock, I still want us to play good games and have both teams succeed, because when the teams succeed, then the whole league succeeds, and you get that feeling really strongly on those calls and all the communications that we're competitors, but we're also in it together. And that stood out to me very significantly in 2 games. Not that it wasn't in the others, but these 2 are head and shoulders above the rest. One was playing against Medellin Revolution. Like their players were so spirited and willing to talk to us and like willing to like meet us and be friendly, despite like some really horrible weather that day that we played them. And we all hung out afterwards. It was like really cool to get to hang out with like the big names from Revolution, like a world caliber team. And then Gridlock themselves, LP, was so welcoming. Like they gave us the best welcome to New York for this game. Like players housed our players. They just found enough so that there was maybe like 2 to 3 red players staying with a bunch of different Gridlock players all over the city, and they showed us around and they fed us, and like that like made me feel so warmly toward your team.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, especially as you get later in the game and it becomes crunch time.
Yeah, I think one of the best parts about being on Gridlock is a lot of time is spent on recognizing that we're more than just athletes. You know, we're entire people, and that our actions affect other people, and that's really important to create that welcoming environment. And that's using our words. That's using, paying attention to what language we're using, and how we do treat our competitors, and we put a lot of work into spirit and just being able to have calm discussions, um, and doing a lot to understand that our perspective is not the only perspective. And so I'm really happy to hear that they, I'm not surprised at all that, obviously like me being there doesn't change how they're gonna play. But I'm really glad I don't think I've talked to a lot of people like what it's like to play against us. So
It's interesting that you can sub in
that's really good
any
to
number of
hear.
players as you want, and so
I think this is the very
exactly is gonna happen
last.
here.
Is this like?
A little bracket
Are
off
we
the
at 4
bat
seconds left in
for
the
Indy
game, or is that
Red.
later? Someone called a
We're
timeout. It
We're
pulled some
close to
switches.
it.
I think we are
You're
getting
right. I
close
think
to the end.
this is
Chelsea the case.
the second to last point. Okay, so our last point's still coming up.
I do want to take a second. Sorry, Kate. I do want to take a second to shout out. We have a winner for our fourth trivia question. Superfan Sandy Canetti graciously, though the first response actually ceded this prize to another Twitter user who got it correct. We're still finding out that person's full name, but Twitter user MLI got the question correct. And again, the question was, what college team runs the unofficial Cassie Wong fan club? And that was the NYU Violet Femmes. NYU Violet Femmes. So Twitter user MLI, multiple different numbers. You are going to be getting a T-shirt, a 2019 Gridlock disc, and a 2019 Gridlock team photo as soon as we get your contact information. So nice job, and also nice job to Superfan Sandy. I'm unsurprised you are so on this stream right now. Can't wait to see you at a tournament soon.
Sandy was probably one of the best parts about moving to New York. He's an awesome person to have on your sideline, and he's a great photographer on top of it.
So in contrast to the third quarter, where Gridlock built up a pretty comfortable cushion of a lead, the fourth quarter so far has been trading. Red held, Gridlock held, red held, and then Gridlock just got a hold as well. And now the clock is running down in this point. So I think it really helps to break the single long professional game into like mini games per quarter, so that you're not letting a quarter like number 3 bring you down for the fourth quarter too. You're starting fresh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a great mentality. That was in the club game, it's almost like those games to 3 that you're always trying to play.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and you probably want to have practice playing those mini games before you get to this point.
Good switch by Indy Red.
She's Christy Kelly in the end zone, but not quite the right throw. And D.
Oh wow.
There's a foul called on the defensive play there. Cassandra Wong, number 71, attempting to.
Oh my gosh, my heart rate is like rising even watching. Is everyone okay? Also, how is this point going to end?
Cassie's mark is stifling. She's so active.
Yeah, she caused a punt there. I think it's because she owns the space she's in, which is something that women aren't typically taught to do until they play athletics. Like, own your space.
I would love to see the number, the
go ahead and spread out.
That's a really good way to spread it.
Or just inside breaks as well by each team. It seems like Gridlock is starting off a lot of their offensive movement by moving the disc to the break side first and then letting their cutters work downfield.
Absolutely.
So Gridlock's D-line got the D against our O, and then we get it back. That's Brittany Winner with that big grab.
Classic move. Lena, so you want? She's got a good cannon. Yeah, we'll get that head nod.
On the mark there. Oh.
Yeah, she found a nice space there.
D attempt there by Tigerlini.
And that's us moving it to, I want to say that's the break side.
Will it stay in bounds?
Yeah.
Not quite.
Which was one of the themes of this game, I thought, like utilizing the break side effectively.
Has been, and it looks like, I will say, Gridlock is enjoying a bit of hometown advantage. It looks like Indy Red may be suffering from a bit of fatigue in this fourth quarter, whereas Gridlock has.
Yeah, and I think
Juleon telling.
I think I brought this up on the stream, but I do wonder, was there sort of how tiring was it to play like this one really intense game with a smaller roster, compared to playing in club when you may have many more subs, and the game moves a little bit slower too.
I remember being so tired at this point. Like every time I went off, I was just like exhausted. And luckily, when you're on the field, covers a lot of that. But like after this, when the game was finally over, and you don't have to like be on anymore. I like went to the sideline and just like sat down and had to breathe. And one of my teammates brought me like a Chardonnay, or champagne maybe. It was like the sweetest gesture to say like, hey, I know this is like maybe an extra for you. She did that for all of the leaders, me and Nicole Quay, Kellen Gibney, who this whole time, Kellen has been on the sideline just like shivering in misery because it was cold and she was injured, so she couldn't and wouldn't have wanted to like leave.
So it sounds like there were 4 seconds
And Sydney, yeah, our team lifted us up.
The
That's true.
shows double zeros.
So I think this is our
buzzer sounds
timeout with just 2 seconds left. This is the one buzzer beater.
4 seconds left in this game.
And Kate, what was this conversation in this huddle at the end of your first PUL game?
I like could not even begin to tell you. This is one of several things I definitely blacked out. If I had to reconstruct it in my head, like, well, what would I have been saying, or what would the coach been saying? It would be something like, go here and do it hard. Like whatever you have left, just pour it out. This is all This is all there is.
Choosing their match.
I'm guessing the opponent was probably having a similar conversation.
Yeah.
This is also one difference between.
We don't have time.
Okay, disc is in play.
Yeah. You just
get the D and just put it. Yeah.
Oh, and
so whatever play we had was stymied.
Disc is up.
But. Gotcha.
Great hand block there on the mark by Jolson Douglas. And an attempt for Gridlock to score one last point, but not completed. And that's game.
And there we have it.
Gridlock, New York Gridlock wins their opening game of the 2019 PUL season. Indy Red.
Yeah. LP, how many times would you say you've seen this game before today?
Played against a very formidable.
It's actually probably like my most rewatched game, even though I am not playing in it, because I watched it twice last year. I watched it twice this week, and now this is my third time, even just this week. So 4 before today.
As a totally unbiased observer, what did you think of Gridlock's first PUL game?
Excited to see what both teams can do this season.
I'm really proud of the end zone, and then I think, definitely super. I think the D line pumps me up. You had multiple Ds by both Cassie and Kesa, Veronica. I'm gonna butcher her last name. Chloe Splaris had some really good end zone Ds, and just all of that. Like, I think that's what carried us throughout the season was that D line intensity, and I'm just really proud. It was so cool to watch this. It was just, those are my teammates. They're kicking butt.
Yeah. Kate, how did it feel to be finished with your first PO game as well? I know it sounds like you had a little champagne to celebrate. But yeah, what did it feel like to have that adrenaline sort of die down and be there at the end of the game?
I'm definitely reliving it like right this second, and the relive is that I'm really proud and honored to be part of the team and part of the league. Proud that our team like balled out. We had some big plays. we had some of that like mental toughness aspect that is sometimes the hardest part. Coming back from being down, for example. Yeah, it was wild. It was very overwhelming.
Well, before I have a ton more questions for you all, but I think we need to wrap up in a moment. I guess folks will just have to tune in for our future live streams to get all of their burning questions answered. But before we head out, LP, do you have any final words you wanna say to the people?
Yeah, I just say thank you so much for hosting. Thanks for continuing to support the PUL. I mean, the sponsorship drive going, what was it? It took 2 or 3 days this year. That was awe-inspiring and continues to mean so much to, I think, me, and I can say for all of PUL athletes that sponsorship drive and you as fans are really what makes a difference for us. And I think Kate mentioned it earlier of like, we're not just playing for us anymore, we're playing for you. And so to continue to have your support, to do what we love. And I think the next important aspect is to get paid for it. It means so much. So thank you. Thanks for watching tonight.
Yeah. Kate?
Yeah, thanks for helping us make women's ultimate ubiquitous, to make it fun. Throw every day. And I think there was a certain level of emphasis on like the team leadership in our conversation. And I just want to take a moment also to shout out people on teams who do those unsung jobs. We need all of you.
Totally. Well, please, fans out there, continue to engage with us on Twitter at @NY_gridlock. We'll be back next week with another rewind, and we hope to see you there. Before we head out, I do want to give a couple more plugs. The first is to Dino, New York Dino, which is a women's club team here in New York for their support with Gridlock's engagement with the National Bailout Fund. Dino has agreed to work with Gridlock to help raise awareness about prisoners and COVID-19 and encourage our communities to get involved when they have the bandwidth to do so. Again, Gridlock is working with the National Bailout Fund to raise money for Black mothers who are in pretrial detention and to bail them out ahead of Mother's Day so they can be at home with their families. You can visit the website nationalbailout.org to donate. And we also wanted to give a shout out to our sponsors. It's amazing to have the money to support a professional women's ultimate league, and these sponsors have made it possible. The first we want to give out a shout out to is Spin, who is the PUL's live stream presenting sponsor. We also want to shout out Discraft, the official disc of the PUL. MatchFit Performance, Gridlock sports performance team for all your virtual sports performance needs. You can send them an email to team@matchfitperformance.com and tell them that Gridlock sent you. And last but certainly not least, VC Ultimate, the official uniform and merchandise sponsor of the Premier Ultimate League. Thank you also to Fulcrum Media for putting on this incredible live stream. You all can't see all the madness that's going on under the hood to make this possible, but it is incredible, and we're so glad to join you virtually in this time where we all have to be isolated a little bit. It's great that Ultimate can bring us together and through such a rad game like this one. So I think that's it for us. We really can't wait to see you next week at our next Rewind. Check us out on Facebook, check us out on Twitter, and we will see you soon.
Hey,
Take care, y'all.
welcome! Some people are nervous about this, anxious. That's great.